Shalom from Port St. Lucie, Florida. Thank you for joining me today as we examine the New Testament Gospel of Matthew. This is Lesson 3 in our series titled New Testament Survey. If you don't have a New Testament, don't worry. All you need is listening ears. As previously stated in Lesson 2, Matthew's Gospel is the first of 5 historical books of the New Testament, or Brit Hadashah, meaning New Covenant in Hebrew. Matthew receives its name from its author, and even though the book itself does not state its author, it was widely accepted by the early church that Matthew was indeed the author of the first gospel. You may be wondering just who is Matthew anyway? Matthew was one of the original disciples of Yeshua. The Gospel of Matthew tells us when and how Matthew became one of Yeshua's disciples. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax collector's booth, and he said to him, "Follow me," and he got up and followed him. Matthew was a first-century Galilean and the son of Alphaeus. Matthew collected taxes from his Jewish brethren for Herod Antipas, and his office was located in Capernaum. As a tax collector, Matthew was most likely literate in both Greek and Aramaic. Matthew may also be the Matthew mentioned in the Talmud, which mentions Matthew as one of 5 disciples of Yeshua. For 15 years, Matthew preached the gospel in Hebrew to the Jewish community in Judea. Later in his ministry, Matthew traveled to the Gentile nations, preaching the good news or gospel of Yeshua. According to early church records, Matthew wrote the gospel account in the Hebrew language. It was translated into Greek, published in Jerusalem, and ultimately Matthew died as a martyr in Heres, a town of Parthia, which is modern-day Tehran. The Gospel of Matthew was most likely written between AD 40 and AD 50, before the destruction of the Jewish temple, since Matthew views this event as a future event. The Gospel of Matthew is addressed primarily to a Jewish audience and answers the questions of just who Yeshua is. Matthew's goal is to present Yeshua as the Jewish Messiah, and Matthew uses more Old Testament quotations than any other book of the New Testament. Thank you for joining me today as we took a closer look at the first historical book of the New Testament, specifically the Gospel of Matthew. Stay tuned for Lesson 4, where we will closely examine Matthew's genealogy of Joseph, the stepfather of Yeshua. You won't want to miss this.